Coming up on this episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society, we graduate from Kong College by finishing the ABCs of Donkey Kong. I am Error, so the Nintendo Cartridge Society is Error with you. Welcome to Nintendo Cartridge Society. My name is Patrick Ellers, and I am joined, as I am always joined, by my co-host, Mark Mitchell. Mark, how's it going?
It's going great. Is it just the Donkey Kong series and Mortal Kombat that both like to replace C's with K's?
Yeah, I think that's about it. And that also may be where the similarities between the series
I think that might
stop.
be it. In the Venn diagram of Mortal Kombat and Donkey Kong.
Actually, I've got another one.
Okay.
The other one is that like their early graphical style, both in Donkey Kong Country and the original Mortal Kombat games,
oh my gosh, you're
is
right.
based on the scanning of images that are otherwise so in Donkey Kong they're pre-rendered and then like scanned into a 16-bit format, and in Mortal Kombat they were photographed human beings who were then like scanned into a 16-bit. Yeah. So like really trying to fake either 3D or photorealistic graphics in a 16-bit setting. These series have a lot more in common, Mark, than you might think.
Thought. Yeah, wow.
Plus they both have fatalities.
Yeah. Famously, spines being pulled out of characters in both series.
Rambi, no! If you would like to support us as we explore Mortal Kombat, you can head on over to patreon.com/Nintendo Cartridge Society, where if you are supporting us at the 8-bit or 16-bit levels, you get access to our once-a-month episodes of miniseries like the upcoming NCS at the Movies.
Yes, and in NCS at the Movies, Patrick and I are going to be going to the movies together, and sometimes with a special guest, and talking about those movies. Of course, due to a scheduling conflict, we didn't have one in June, so July will be kicking off with a double feature.
Double feature.
We're going to be doing 2 separate episodes in July of NCS.
Yeah, they're 2 separate episodes, so it's not really a double feature.
But if you waited till the end of the month, you could listen to them together.
Both, or even just wait until the second one happens.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
Which doesn't even have to be the end. It'll be pretty close to the end of the month, though, right?
Because we're going to be seeing Superman. And then we're going to be seeing the Fantastic Four First Steps, or Fantastic Four The First Steps, or is there a the? Maybe there's no the.
Let's get rid of all the thes. Okay, so we're just seeing Superman and Fantastic Four First Steps.
Yep.
Mark, what is your favorite Superman movie to this point?
I don't care about Superman.
What is your favorite Fantastic Four movie to this point?
I don't really care about the Fantastic Four. So,
do you like the Fantastic Four comics at all? Have you ever gotten into them that way?
I've never really read like a series or anything. Like I've read comics like Avengers or something where Fantastic Four show up or members of the Fantastic Four, but I've never read a run of like Fantastic Four comics. What about you?
There have been some really great runs of Fantastic Four in the last like decade and a half. Like Hickman had a really killer run on them. Matt Fraction had a really good run on Fantastic Four and FF for a little while. But yeah, like the sort of classic Fantastic Four I've never read. But I'm excited for both these movies to sort of like win me over to both of these concepts, which haven't been particularly, to my eyes, well executed in the movies for a long time, or possibly ever. I watched the original Superman the movie not that long ago, and that's like 75% a good movie that like lacks any kind of narrative direction, and then the second the narrative direction kicks in, it sucks.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But we'll talk more about Superman movies on the episode where we're talking about Superman movies. And of course, if you are subscribing at the 8 or 16-bit levels on Patreon, you get access to all of our old NCS arcades, NCS Goes Broadway, NCS, the other one, Detective Club. So check all of that out if you're interested. Also, you should be in our Discord. Email us at nintendocartridgesociety@gmail.com, and we will send you an invitation. Mark, are you ready to finish the work that we began last week with the ABCs of Donkey Kong?
Let's do it.
All right. So last week we did A through M. So we are going to be picking up with N. We got a little mixed up in the order because I demanded to go next at one point when it was your turn. But I maintain it was worth it to shout out that Lanky Kong should be in Super Smash Brothers.
But I think we righted ourselves because I started M with Minecart, so I think you'll start N.
Okay, I will start my N. So I started A with something that felt very like foundational to and very important to what Donkey Kong is. Go back and listen to that episode if you want to hear that. So I feel a little bit bad kicking off this episode with something that's a little less consequential, but is still in no small part, Donkey Kong, and that is Necky.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Is this yours as well?
Last episode, we also started off with having the same ends.
Great.
And yes, Necky is, in fact, my N.
Okay, great.
Yes.
So Necky, of course, is the like vulture enemy, who then also is the vulture boss in the original Donkey Kong Country. Mark, did you encounter this piece of trivia that there is a fire Necky as a boss in DK King of Swing?
What?
So it's they call it Fire Necky, but instead of just being, I was about to say instead of just being a Necky that's on fire, which in itself is such an insane thing to say that I don't know how I could call it just, but it's like a phoenix, basically, a bird totally wreathed in flames, does not look like a vulture, but it's one of the bosses from DK King of Swing.
I wonder if that's like a Nintendo of America localization choice to like...
Oh, sure, to draw that connection?
Yeah, totally a guess. I have absolutely no idea. So it was not until... We've had a conversation about Necky before where I realized that it is a vulture and not a flamingo. And because
about the boss character,
right? Because until we had that conversation, I did not draw the connection that the boss characters in Donkey Kong Country
big versions
are just big versions, of regular enemies you would see, and so that continues to blow my mind. That Necky, which for 20 some odd years I just thought was a flamingo,
right?
For no reason other than, like, if I looked at it closely, clearly it's not a flamingo.
So in your imagination, you were imagining that it was like just standing off screen?
I mean, that's basically what it's doing now.
No, I assume it's flying, right? That it's like hovering right in front of you when it like pokes its head on.
Oh, really?
Screen.
Oh, yeah, it could be.
I assume because it's so high up that it's like flying.
Oh, interesting. But like, how could it hover? Birds can't hover.
This one
can't reverse.
They can't reverse.
Only hummingbirds can fly backwards. And so yeah, but to me it makes so much. I mean, yeah, I guess Necky is also in my mind still standing off screen and then just like poking its head in. But a flamingo has such a long neck. Like, it just seems so much more natural that it would be standing off screen and then be like, what's going on in here? I don't care for this.
So, I see where you get there, so I'm not criticizing you. But don't you think that, like, if Rare was making a flamingo character, that it would be called, like, Pinky or something?
No, you're right. These are all very valid points. And
I have a different P that is not Pinky.
It is very clear that Necky is, in fact, a vulture, and vultures especially, like, I guess, have beautiful long necks as well. So
can we talk about why there are vultures in Donkey Kong Country?
Yeah,
because I guess I'm full of questions now that I'm thinking about it. So also, why do the vultures like spit nuts at you or coconuts? What are they spitting at you? It's just the little ones and Necky that like the boss that do that.
And doesn't can't Squawky also
Squawks the parrot?
Squawks.
Or Quawks. Maybe we'll get to it in a little bit. It's tough to get a cue.
Yeah, you're right.
We'll talk about that.
Too much. But you're right.
Is it really just that, like, for Donkey Kong Country, they were like, let us now turn to the Jungle Book and find our
because there are vultures in the Jungle Book,
even though that's more of like a savanna or like
Right.
American West style creature to be
Well,
in the jungle.
well, and like again, not to like uh validate my delusions any more than we already have. Aren't flamingos more like jungle-ish?
I mean, I don't think so, right? They're also kind of like savanna birds, right?
Oh, okay.
Or like marsh areas. Maybe that's more
Yeah,
accurate.
maybe they're
It's more
swamp
marshy.
animals.
Yeah. Because they live in Florida, right? Flamingos live in Florida.
I at least associate them with Florida.
Me
Now
too.
flamingos, vultures. I I just
We don't
don't.
care anymore.
I
They're the
just don't.
same.
I just don't feel like I can really accurately speak to it.
Right.
Um. Also, also with Neki, one thing that's kind of interesting about the original Donkey Kong Country games is until you get to King K. Rool, there's no it's not like the final boss of a level makes any sense, right? It's
Yeah,
not like it's
right.
like building to anything or like thematically, except maybe that like giant oil barrel that's jumping around.
Yeah, because he's in the industrial
I
area,
think
right?
so. Yeah.
Yeah. So that one sort of makes sense. But yeah, the rest of them are just like, now this beaver is really big.
Uh-huh.
We didn't talk about naughty in our G section. But yeah, Neki. I don't know. It feels like kind of inconsequential, but like a weirdly prominent part of the Donkey Kong Country games.
Yeah.
Uh,
Agreed.
so now, Mark, your O.
Okay, so my O, I don't is outposts, and I don't think they're actually canonically called this. But what I mean is in the Donkey Kong Country games, the kind of like side uh areas that you would go to between levels in the games. So you of course have like the levels, but then you also visit Funky's Flights or Swinky's Bonus Bonanza
Right.
or like Wrinkly's Save Cave and like those
Or
sorts of areas.
Candy's save something.
Hut,
It's
barrel,
unclear what's happening there. Yeah.
right? But yeah, I feel like that's such a prominent part of the country series.
Yeah. Is Outpost, is that something that like you called them as a kid, or just like
No, it is a desperate scramble for
Gotcha.
an O.
very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think those are so interesting, especially when like you compare to how that same kind of thing is deployed in a Mario game, right? Where it's like a Toad House or like a sort of like random game of chance. That Donkey Kongs are a lot more kind of like intentional and like gameplay focused, where it's either like a store or a save point or the Kong College referred to earlier in this episode, where you're like getting hints about stuff. It's interesting how much more like mechanically focused they are in DK.
I also like how they became reasons for them to invent new Kongs. Like
Sure.
so many of the Kongs that now populate, the Kong universe
Mm-hmm.
were created just as these little side characters that like Funky started out as Funky's Flights. You know what I mean? Like and then
And
later
Candy and Swanky, yeah.
and then later became like more prominent parts of it. And yeah, I think that's a fun bit of invention.
I like that too. A good scramble, Mark, for Outposts. My O is for Orange Grenade. Mark, Donkey Kong 64. You and I have not actually spent too much time on this show talking about Donkey Kong 64 because it hasn't really been playable in modern context for a long time, even though it should be on NSO. One of the weirdest things about Donkey Kong 64 is that all of the Kongs have their own gun. And in addition to having guns, they also have orange grenades.
Huh.
Which they lob like grenades.
Like orange, like the color, or orange like the fruit?
Mark, yes, both. But it's like an orange that has like a pin on the top
Okay,
of
yeah,
it.
that's what I was trying to drill
Right.
down into.
Yes.
Is if it was like it looked like a grenade,
Uh-huh.
but
No.
it was just an orange color,
No.
or if it is the fruit orange that functions as a grenade
Right. It is the fruit orange that functions as a grenade.
and is also orange.
And is also orange, right? Because it is an orange. An orange is our orange. And when you throw it, it like splats. There's an explosion, but it's like a juicy explosion. And so part of the reason that the Kongs have these weapons including the orange grenade. And they all use the same grenade. They have different guns, but the same grenade. And part of the reason that they have these, like they get used a little bit in the main game, but for the most part, they're kind of there to justify the multiplayer where you're like running around a map, shooting at each other. To echo Jet Force Gemini, to echo GoldenEye, to echo Perfect Dark. It's just this like weird thing that Rare was chasing at the time of like we need to have this 4-player split screen battle mode. And so as a result, they like insert this like weirdly violent imagery in terms of guns and grenades into a Donkey Kong game.
Isn't Funky Kong like the arms dealer, and isn't he kind of dressed
Yes.
up in camo, like he's like a
It's
survivalist or something?
Yes, it is the worst look for Funky Kong.
It's not very funky at all.
No, in fact, it's like the squarest he could possibly be. But yeah, so this orange grenade just represents something wholly bizarre about Donkey Kong 64, and like I don't know, virtually unplayable. That Donkey Kong 64 is a tax on the Nintendo 64 hardware already, and requires the expansion pack, right, to play it. And when you then try to render that 4 times on the 4-player split screen mode, it slows to an unplayable crawl. And maybe that's part of the reason why they haven't put it on NSO, is that it would just be a total mess to play that multiplayer. But yeah, what a weird thing that they were trying to do anyway.
I feel like the one remnant of that remains today that we see sometimes is Diddy Kong's like peanut guns.
Yes, yeah, I agree. Because like we don't like Smash Donkey Kong doesn't have his coconut gun, right? I don't think he does. I don't think he does.
Oh, okay.
But Diddy definitely has the peanut guns, and also like for whatever reason, peanut gun feels like
silly.
That feels silly, yeah. But like famously, again, I will reference the DK rap for the second time in 2 episodes. If Donkey Kong shoots you with the coconut gun, it's gonna hurt. Anyway, the orange grenade. What a bizarre.
Yeah. How weird.
Yes.
Maybe that'll feature. Maybe like guns feature prominently in Donkey Kong Bonanza.
Yeah, that's
They
right.
just haven't shown that part yet.
Lovingly
rendered AK-47.
Oh, just guns.
Yeah.
They're not even like fruit themed or whatever. Okay, so that then goes to My P.
Mm-hmm.
My P is for Pilot, one of 2 canceled Diddy Kong Racing sequels. Diddy Kong Pilot was set to release on Game Boy Advance in 2022, but surprise, Rare was purchased by Microsoft.
In
sorry,
2002?
2002, yes. Anyway, Microsoft bought Rare in September of 2002. So they scrapped the Diddy Kong part of that and made it a banjo racing game on the GBA called Banjo Pilot. Banjo like Dash Pilot, like Banjo Kazooie, but the Kazooie parts lifted out and Pilot put in there. And it would have been a Diddy Kong racing game where they're just flying planes and using like mode 7 on the GBA to make the tracks. The version of it that came out on that did come out on GBA in 2005, the Banjo Pilot, got kind of like middling reviews, so like maybe we dodged a little bit of a bullet there. But yeah, just that weird that this along with the Donkey Kong Racing that would have been a GameCube game, that both of these sequels kind of like evaporated, and now we'll probably never see a Diddy Kong Racing game ever again.
Yeah.
Is just a fascinating little bit of sliding doors.
And another like omission on the Nintendo 64 on Nintendo Switch.
Yep.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
No Diddy Kong Racing. Do you know if that Banjo Racing,
Banjo Pilot,
Banjo Pilot, does it follow the same kind of like structure as Diddy Kong Racing, where it has like an open world?
I don't know how it
stuff?
could like to render a track using mode 7, like you can get away with that, but at like a whole open world with mode 7, that'd be a little bit of a disaster. But so I don't know. I've never actually played Banjo Pilot.
Okay, my P. I have 3 different ones that I'm trying to choose from.
Wow.
but we've already talked about Pauline in other contexts,
Sure.
so I won't use that one. Um, I'm going to go with pre-rendered. And so talk about the graphics for Donkey Kong Country,
Yes.
because this was at a time where, like, 1994, the Super Nintendo, not that it was unsuccessful, but it was feeling heat from, like the Genesis and other, like competitors for the first time, really. And Nintendo went all in on marketing to kids how amazing and mind blowing the graphics of Donkey Kong Country were. Because 3D gaming was just starting to make inroads.
Yeah, so
And
and the PlayStation 1 comes out at the end of 1994. So
okay,
yeah,
yeah.
just a little bit after um Donkey Kong Country.
And so Nintendo had to do something to make it seem like, no, the Super Nintendo can do cutting edge graphics just like, this PlayStation that you're hearing about.
Or just like the Sega CD, which is already on the market, or the 32X, which is on the market. Like, games are moving in a direction of 3D, and Nintendo is not there yet and won't be there. Like, Nintendo's gonna miss that the race to 3D because the Nintendo 64 doesn't come out until 1996. And so by that point, the PlayStation has been out in Japan for 2 years, America for a year and a half or whatever. And so like, they had to do something, and they always found these like little tricks. Like the Super FX chip is one solution. I mentioned Mode 7 before. That was another like half measure, and then here comes Donkey Kong Country.
Yeah, and so the way that it worked is that they Rare would like fully render in 3D the characters, and then they would digitize those and turn them into sprites. So everything in Donkey Kong Country is a pre-rendered animation that is basically stitched together
Right.
with 2D sprites.
Right, which gives it a very distinctive look that can look like bad now, especially when you see it on like a pixel perfect display. Like, it's the kind of thing that really is done favors by the old CRT TVs to sort of like complete that illusion. I wonder what it would be like if they were to try to like just remake one of those games with like actual 3D models.
Oh, interesting. I mean, I guess, yeah, I guess maybe it would look similar to
Tropical Freeze or
Tropical
whatever.
Freeze,
Yeah.
or Returns.
But that would be a cool like way to represent the original trilogy.
That would be fun. Well, and also, like, I'll be darned if it didn't work. Like, I
Totally,
thought that
yes.
the Donkey, I remember, totally buying into the hype and being like,
Mhm.
wow, Donkey Kong Country looks amazing.
Right.
Never seen anything like this before.
Yeah, well, and it was also, because they had these renders of the characters, they use them in all of the marketing, right? So gone are like drawings of the characters that are then being represented by 16-bit models. Now you are getting the high def models that are basically being scanned and like de-resed down to fit in your Super NES. So like the marketing more closely resembled the actual product. And so like you could also project those images onto the screen
Yeah, totally.
yourself. So yeah, it was a good little bit of magic that they were pulling there.
So moving on to my queue then. My queue is questionable quests. And I'm of course talking about the banana collection madness that is Donkey
Yeah.
Kong 64.
Yeah.
Really kind of like the pinnacle, in not necessarily a good way, nadir maybe, of the kind of rare collectathon experience.
Yes.
So I own Donkey Kong 64. I remember my parents like buying it for my family, and me and my siblings loved the Country series. And so I was very excited for Donkey Kong 64, and I've never beaten it because I just remember being very confused by it. It wasn't
Yes.
what I was expecting. And the like it I feel like a lot of what happens with the rare games in the Nintendo 64 era, we saw this with Jet Force Gemini, the Banjo-Kazooie games are also built around this, where it's just like stuff to the gills with things that you have to collect, things that you have to pick up, things that are
Right.
required to collect in order to advance in the game. And it just kind of becomes a little bit exhausting to me.
Yeah, and not just like and this was a criticism of them at the time, right? Not even just something that we are looking back on and being like, oh yeah, I guess this didn't age great. Um, yeah, they had these like big sandboxes to like run around in, and then they were like, well, we better fill it with sand, and it's like, oh, that doesn't actually make it more interesting.
And I wonder sometimes if like they felt I wonder why. I wonder why they felt the need. Was it because the levels weren't as big or like took too long to develop and so they felt like they needed to reuse them and find a mechanic that allowed you to reuse them? Like
Yeah,
I don't really know.
it's tough to say because like Rare was on such an insane tear of putting out these big Nintendo 64 games, right? That had these explorable environments that were just massive. So like, were they really hurting for, or is just like
Yeah.
a matter of like not knowing how to edit, or like no one had reached that obnoxious upper limit of collectibles yet. And so they did it like 3 times in a row, hitting their head on the ceiling every time, and then had to pivot afterwards. And Donkey Kong 64 is like the pinnacle of that. So that was your questionable quests.
Yes, that's right.
My Q is Quawks.
Aha.
Quawks. And look, we're about to talk about Quawks and Squawks the parrot, sort of in conjunction here, and I don't want to be corrected on this because it is confusing how many different parrot characters there are in the Donkey Kong Country games.
I think there's two.
Quawks and Squawks?
Uh-huh.
Are you sure there's not another one?
I'm pretty sure it's just Quack and Squawks.
Okay.
But no, I would not bet my life on it. I wouldn't swear in court that there's only two.
So the Quawks, I believe, retroactively got the name Quawks to distinguish it from Squawks, is the parrot that carries you in Donkey Kong Country 2, and that spits either coconuts or seeds or whatever it is out of its beak to help you navigate the areas like not Bramble Blast, but like those.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's just like one of the animal buddies. Mark, is this, I believe, our opportunity to just finish talking about the animal buddies? I don't have another one.
Oh, yeah. Okay. We were going to. I have a note to do it on W.
Right.
But let's do it now.
I've come up with a different W.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Okay. Yes. Because really, there are, for me, for my money, because I played the first Donkey Kong Country game so much, those original animal buddies will always be my favorite.
Totally.
And I think Rambi is probably the most memorable.
Rambi comes back,
Yeah.
right? We've seen Rambi in Bonanza, yes?
I think we have, yeah.
And he's obviously in Tropical Freeze and
Mhm.
Return. So Rambi is a good boy. He's a rhino. They animate him like a dog, like he pants, and all this wonderful stuff. So he's obviously like always part of our heart forever. I referred to, maybe I was going to do one for W. That's Winky the frog. Why is his name Winky? That's the only one that doesn't really make sense.
Nope.
I love it though. Yeah. Any other thoughts about the animal buddies?
No, but I feel like there is so much of Donkey Kong Country that is like mapping what exists for Mario.
Yes.
And then kind of like putting a Donkey Kong spin on it. And I feel like the animal buddies are taking what's fun about Yoshi and being like, how do we make this work in the world that we're creating for Donkey Kong Country?
Yeah, totally. I absolutely agree with that. There should be a Donkey Kong that takes place in like a prehistoric area. He should have dinosaurs that are his buddies.
And that would be so fun. And do you think that he could wear like a caveman like loincloth type thing?
Absolutely can.
That's made of fur.
Yeah, just different
but
fur.
Just like yeah, mammoth fur or something.
Oh, and then Candy Kong can have a bone in her hair. I love this.
They can talk on telephones that are like bones or tusks or
like a shell.
Something. Yeah,
maybe it's a tusk. I think you're right.
Yeah.
That it's like a horn of some kind.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. So we're just basically pitching Donkey Kong Flintstones.
Yep.
Good.
Yep. Yep.
Good.
Copyright Mark Mitchell 2025.
All right, that leads us to my R. And my R is Rabid Cranky Kong. Mark, do you remember in Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle, there was DLC that was Donkey Kong
I
related?
do. Yeah. I never bought the DLC.
I did, but I did not play it. One of obviously the conceit of the game is that there is a like copying device that the rabbits get a hold of, and through it they create rabid versions of the Mario characters. There's a Mario, a Luigi, a Peach, a Yoshi. Um, but in the DLC, there is also a Cranky Kong that is a rabid character.
Oh,
Now,
that's fun.
he's not nearly as charismatic as I would say any of the rest of the rabid characters. We love Rabid Mario and Rabid Peach and how they're basically drag. It's incredible. And the Rabid Cranky Kong is just like a large old Rabid. But still kind of cool. Got to shout out Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle.
Yeah, that is a great one. My R is kind of just a celebration of the letter R because I find it so delightful and sometimes confusing when I'm trying to do it off the cuff that both Rare and Retro Studios were
Sure.
the developers of the Donkey Kong Country series. And
Yeah.
then it's just like, if you're making a Donkey Kong Country game, your
Right.
studio has to start with the letter R.
Right. Or you have to be an internal Nintendo. I guess Nintendo themselves.
The Country
that's right.
series,
That's
yeah.
right. Yeah, that is weird. Retro and Rare.
Uh-huh.
And also they're like just single words.
And both like storied studios
Yeah,
in their
totally.
own right, like Retro that took on the Donkey Kong Country series after doing Metroid Prime, and then Rare that worked with Nintendo for such a long time. But I would say, or at least I became aware of them as developers, this is a Rare game starting with Donkey Kong
Yeah, one. I feel like that's where they
Country.
Yes, and both studios, both Rare and Retro, you and I've talked about this before, have like the rare distinction of having their studio name like appear at the front of these Nintendo games, and that they are like marketing beats for Nintendo, right? During the Nintendo 64 era, they were like, this is a Rare game, and that means something. Nintendo is loath to do that.
No, they never put the name of a developer
Right.
like front and center. You're right, except in these
For Rare and Retro.
Yeah.
And Masahiro Sakurai. Like that's the other he is a brand in and of himself that is additive to Nintendo. Any other Nintendo development partner is seemingly a hindrance.
Well, with especially like Metroid Prime 4,
yeah.
They did not talk at all about who was developing it until it had to be rebooted. And then again, they were very upfront about it's going to Retro.
Right.
So interesting.
Yeah, that like those and for whatever reason, they're both R studios.
Yeah.
So a very good R, Mark.
My S is for the Stamper Brothers, who are the founders of the developer Rare.
Oh.
Yeah, so there are two British gentlemen that started
brothers, presumably.
They are brothers. Yeah, that's right. And they from a very I can't remember what we were talking about or what we were like researching when we came across this, but it was only in the past like few months or so. Maybe it was when we were doing the Jet Force Gemini episode, so maybe it was longer than that for NCS Arcade. But that Rare started working with Nintendo so early on like the NES, and that they became kind of like a premier Western developer that Nintendo would go to on the NES to develop games. And they're all over the Nintendo Entertainment System, developing games like that were published by Nintendo, developing for third parties like
Snake Rattle and Roll, Battletoads.
Yeah. Cobra Triangle.
Sure.
Like so, and then they kind of graduated to almost a Nintendo second party in the Super Nintendo era, and then eventually, were sold to Microsoft. But it was really their work with Nintendo and their close collaboration with Nintendo. And I think it's just, and the Stamper Brothers were never they were not the face of the studio. They didn't do a lot of interviews. They weren't out front when the Donkey Kong Country series was hitting big, they've always been they were always a little bit behind the scenes, a little bit like removed from it all. I don't know, it's just kind of like interesting.
Yeah. Well, it's also interesting that like in that time in the Super Nintendo era, there weren't too many faces of Nintendo at that point, right? Like and video is such a rare way to like publicize things at the time, but Nintendo was sending around like video cassettes to like Nintendo Power subscribers that would have like previews of Donkey Kong Country, Star Fox 64, all this kind of stuff, Jet Force Gemini, and yeah, so there just were fewer faces to put with
That's
fewer
true.
talking heads.
I
Right?
also feel like Miyamoto was covering so much ground
Totally, yes.
back then because he was the face of Mario, he was the face of Zelda, and those were such like huge heavy hitters.
Right.
He was just kind of like the Nintendo game developer guy.
Right. Yes.
I don't know that I said their names. Tim and Chris Stamper.
Okay, I assume it was trying to make a Car Guys joke. Tickin', what are their names? Frickin' Frack?
Frickin'
The
Clank, is Clank in there?
Click and Clack.
Click and Clack.
There we go. Jeez. May they rest in peace. Are they both dead? One of them died, right?
The show for sure is R.I.P., right?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either.
They'll run Cart Talk forever.
Car Talk is a public radio like
staple, yes.
Staple where people call in asking like mechanical questions about their car, and Click and Clack.
Yeah, the Tapper brothers.
Right.
Who weren't actually brothers, right?
I don't know. I had forgotten all about Car Talk until you brought it up.
Car Talk was because it was and they would answer car questions, but they would also have like riddles, and they would also just like talk for a while.
Yeah,
too.
It was just a fun it was kind of like a hangout show.
So it was kind of a hangout show and like predated podcasts. So as soon as like podcasts became a thing, and like the NPR shows also started appearing as podcasts, Car Talk became one of the most successful podcasts just because it had this built-in listener base. It was like Car Talk and Marin for the longest time at number 1 and 2.
Okay, here we go.
Yeah.
Click and Clack, the Tappet brothers.
Tappet, okay.
But they're like Tappet. But their names are Tom and Ray Magliozzi.
So they are brothers.
They are real brothers,
Okay.
and a tappet is a component inside an internal combustion engine.
Got it. So it's all that pun all makes sense.
Yes. It ran from 1977 to 2012. 2012 was the last time there were original
77?
But edited reruns are carried on like XM or like Sirius Radio.
Yeah.
On both the public radio and NPR Now channels.
Yeah.
Woo, Car Talk. I had totally forgotten about that.
It's a dynasty.
Yeah. Car Talk, the Tappet brothers, the Stamper brothers.
There we go. Which brings us to my S, a much less impactful S. I'm referring, of course, to Sumo Kong, one of the potential evil kings from Donkey Kong Jungle Beat. I mostly like that the evil Kongs from Jungle Beat are all like based on forms of combat. So there's like a Karate Kong, and this one is sumo. And like, yeah, give me more evil monkeys that are based in like fighting.
I do like that.
That's fun.
That's fun.
And kind of like consistent with the idea that those are games where Donkey Kong is expressly more violent and is like trying to beat people up. Of course, he should go up against a sumo wrestler Kong. That's perfect. All right, that's my S. My T is for the Tiki Tack tribe, invoked earlier when we mentioned the Kremlings as the sort of main antagonists of the first 3 Donkey Kong Country games. The Tiki Tack tribe, an invention of Retro Studios, is the main villainous force of Donkey Kong Country Returns. And it is a are they ghosts? Are they the masks themselves? There's some supernatural force that comes to the island and hypnotizes all of the animals except Donkey Kong, who is too dumb to be hypnotized. And I would say that is like canon in the game, right?
Yeah.
It's part of the opening
sure.
cutscene. They do their little dance in front of him, and Donkey Kong's like, he doesn't care.
Yep. Yeah, when we were doing our ranking of Donkey Kong villains, it made me go back, because this was before Donkey Kong Country Returns HD had been released. And so it had been a while since I had played Returns at all. And so going back and kind of like watching the cutscenes of the Tiki Tak tribe, it made me appreciate them more. I still think they are the more them and the villains from Tropical Freeze are the more forgettable of the,
Yes.
and partly because they just showed up in the one game.
Yeah,
You know what I
totally.
mean? They didn't have like multiple games to establish themselves. But
It is interesting to do a like hypnosis based villain and not turn any of Donkey Kong's friends against him, right?
mhm,
Like, well, what's kind of the point of doing a mind control thing if you're
right.
not going to have the villain be
Oh my
Diddy
gosh,
Kong or
yeah, could you
whatever?
imagine if like Lanky Kong with his big ol' arms was out there slapping you?
Yeah, playing an evil trombone.
It would work. The Tiki Tak tribe, like their his hypnosis is all kind of music based.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do like at the end that they like grind up or like blend a Donkey Kong's banana horde to like fill up their villain with, like they're
Oh,
the big
yes.
bad.
Yes.
There's kind of like, because they're like, why does King K. Rool want the bananas? It doesn't really matter, but at
Right.
least they gave him the Tiki Tak tribe a purpose, a drive.
Right. They needed to make a big smoothie to fill their
Yeah.
tiki boss with.
My tea is Tropical Freeze. It's really hard because I have such nostalgia for the original Donkey Kong Country game, but I feel like probably the best Donkey Kong Country game is Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze.
Yeah, I'll agree.
And I think the co-op in it is like really fun, and for me there's just something really magical about the blend of the music in that game with the levels. I
Yeah,
think
that's like progressive music that like gets more layers on it as you get into areas where like it, and they're also like diegetic things that like change the music. It's really fascinating.
yeah, and the original reception to the announcement of Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, I really think caught everybody flat-footed. Where like a lot of the feedback online was kind of anger that Retro was working on another Donkey Kong, or had been
Yeah,
working
yeah.
on another Donkey Kong game instead of, I don't know, like something else, another. I don't even really remember people
Another
watching.
Metroid, probably.
Yeah.
I mean, Metroid had been then at this point like kind of squandered, right? This is a post Other M world,
You're
right?
right. Yeah.
So like, I think that was kind of it, that people were like, "No, we need you to come back and rescue Metroid," and they weren't doing that. Instead, they were like actually rescuing Donkey Kong, because I think if like a lesser studio was handed Returns as a template, then like the sequel to Returns could have been worse. And like Returns to me is like right on the edge of good enough. Like if it gets much worse than that, it's a game I don't want to play. And I didn't buy the HD
And I
version.
did and did not really like it. I
Yeah.
didn't have a lot of fun with it.
That was the first Nintendo game I didn't buy in 12 consecutive months.
And the Switch version of Tropical Freeze, you and I played some of the Wii U version
Oh, yeah.
together,
Mhm.
but for like an episode early in the show.
Yeah.
But when it was released on Switch, that's the version I played, and I definitely think that the Wii U version is too hard for me, at least, and I think the Switch version goes a long way to fixing all of those problems. But I think the platforming is really good. It's really inventive. All the use of different characters is a lot of fun. Tropical Freeze is
And the level design, I
the
think
level design is
it's
great.
it's really ingenious and breaks a little bit the mold of like a jungle level, desert level, water level. The sort of normal Mario like standard. Even Returns kind of did this too, where it felt just kind of boring. But like the types of levels, the shapes of the world, you've got this like crazy savannah area that like goes into like Lion King on Broadway sort of stuff. You've got the juice factory world that where like all of it is building up to making these juices, and it's just so much more interesting than what a platformer normally offers in terms of aesthetics of levels.
And I do think that the boss fights are too much.
They're too long,
They
yeah.
go on for too long, but it's a minor complaint for what I think generally is just a really amazing game. And I don't know that if the response had been different, that they would have ever made a third one, because Nintendo likes to do things
Right.
in twos. But I do think that it left Tropical Freeze with a like wonky legacy.
Sure, right. Well, it's yes, I agree with that. It's that what happened with Tropical Freeze feels a lot like what happened with like Wind Waker, and it's one of those things where it's just like when a Nintendo game is revealed to us, we have a reaction, and who knows if that reaction is going to be borne out by time, right? Like what are the reputations of these things as we move on, and people have actually played them and like gotten over whatever perceived offense was at the beginning. 10 years from now, will it matter that Mario Kart World was $80? It seems to be like the chief knock against it right
Yeah.
now. Who's even going to know that in 10 years? And the same sort of thing with like, if you were to show someone Wind Waker now, and they're not going to be like, what's up with this cartoony stuff? They're going to be like, oh, cool, that looks great,
Yeah.
So yeah, I find that like the arc of Nintendo history to be very interesting there, and that in the moment we have no idea what's going on. Your you, Mark?
My U is for underwater levels.
Ah, yes.
Another exactly like another thing that they I feel like mapped from Mario to be like, oh, I guess
Yes.
like a lot of platformers,
Sure.
right? It's just like, oh, underwater levels are fairly standard, but there is something about a Donkey Kong Country underwater level that feels
Yes.
so different, and a lot of it is to do with the music.
Mm-hmm.
It makes the whole thing feel like a little bit more mysterious, a little dangerous, a little more like ethereal and relaxing at the same time.
Yeah.
It's such an interesting mood, an interesting vibe that I feel like is very specific to Donkey Kong Country, and I don't really associate with other platformers underwater levels.
You know what's interesting is that I think that, especially for the Super NES games, that's almost exclusively because of the music. Because, like, those levels aren't less demanding. They're still very difficult levels.
Yeah, they're very mean.
They're very mean. And usually you're being chased by, like, a big rolling gear or something.
I hate the levels in, is it Donkey Kong Country 3, where there's like the fish that chases after you.
Oh, yes.
Because it's like
yes, that's
hungry
3.
or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and, like, I don't like the levels in 2 where you're in, like, areas that, like, flood and, like, where the water level, like, raises and lowers. I think those are bad. But, like, it's the
Yeah, is it only the like music? Like, is it only the
I think it
environment?
might be.
Yeah.
But I think that in Returns and Tropical Freeze, they sort of changed the temperature on those to make them feel more like the music.
You're right. They totally do. I love, is it in Tropical Freeze when they introduce kind of like the silhouette motif, but to the underwater
That's in
levels?
Returns.
Oh, okay,
but yeah, but there is one of those. There's like a dark one in Tropical Freeze where you have to like spin near like bioluminescent creatures to like light up the area, and that totally feels as mysterious and as dangerous and cool as the aquatic ambience music would imply. Yeah, underwater is a great thing to sort of shout out about Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Country specifically. My U, Mark, is for Universal City Studios versus Nintendo Co. Ltd. The court case where Sid Sheinberg of Universal was like, hey, wait a minute. Nintendo's getting rich off this Donkey Kong stuff. We own King Kong, and then like went into high gear trying to stop the game to being licensed to home consoles and like Tiger Electronics and all this kind of stuff. And like people like Coleco and some other console manufacturers at the time were like holding their ports of Donkey Kong because Universal was like claiming their own right over them. And then Nintendo goes to legal war. Nintendo of America goes to war with Universal Studios. As led by the attorney John Kirby, who eventually the character Kirby will be named after.
That's so funny.
And the way that Universal is arguing this creates confusion in the marketplace. People see Kong and they think of our character Donkey Kong, and Kirby's like, Universal themselves have argued that that King Kong as a story is in the public domain. They've used it in court. They've used that in court before. And so the case gets like thrown out. Nintendo is awarded basically everything. And they get the right to publish Donkey Kong games on basically everything. And Universal has to pay like millions of dollars, $4.6 million in like lost income to Nintendo
Oh.
and their publishing partners on different platforms. So it's just kind of an unmitigated failure on Universal's part to defend their intellectual property, which it turns out was just public domain. They had argued was public domain.
Yeah, I mean, I can did Nintendo ever argue that like the Kong part of it was not derived from King Kong?
Not to my
Because it just seems so
knowledge.
obvious, right?
Yes,
But
totally.
yeah.
But it's just it's yeah. So this is from Wikipedia. Nintendo's counsel John Kirby countered that Universal had argued in a previous case that King Kong's scenario and characters were in the public domain by way of the novelization of the 1933 film.
Whoa.
Yeah. So it's it does seem like Nintendo got lucky.
Yeah,
that like that
totally.
precedent had already been set by.
Especially through the novelization.
I know.
That is crazy. That
Yeah.
is not the movie that was in the public domain. The novelization of the movie.
Yep.
Also, now they're best friends, Universal and
I know, isn't that
and
interesting?
Nintendo.
To think that like bitter rivals in a court case at one point and now like opening theme parks together, and it's just
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, yeah, I don't know, money heals all wounds.
Right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, very good.
All right, which then brings us to my V.
Uh-huh.
My V is for Vine. In the Donkey Kong Country game, something that like you swing across, it closes gaps. Not really something that we had seen in Mario platformers to this point. But that we do see in the original Donkey Kong games. That like Donkey Kong Jr. climbs up vines. They don't swing, but it's part of his like up and down how he moves. And it's just like an interesting little part of it's in the Donkey Kong Jr. Game and Watch as well. He climbs up vines. So that vines are just like an integral part of what makes Donkey Kong, either in arcade. It's just like barrels at like the girders, these things that just carry over.
Yeah, totally. That's a good one. My V is for VHS tape. So you had
Yes.
mentioned it before, but then Nintendo used to send out these promotional VHS tapes to like Nintendo Power subscribers that were hyping up the latest Nintendo release. And when I don't know if you've ever watched or recently have watched the Donkey Kong Country one.
Oh, not recently. No, I had this tape though.
But it is again, Nintendo is pushing back as they in the 90s, the 90s marketing generally speaking was really like aggressive and about being like in your face.
Mhm.
And Nintendo always has this reputation of being like family friendly and all this kind of stuff. And so they were trying really hard in the 90s to be cool
in America.
In America,
Right.
to be cool. And so they had a slogan at the time that was like "Play it loud," and the video is all about play it loud. So it starts with it's like five high school boys sitting around
The coolest people you could
exactly
imagine.
sitting around a conference table, or like not a conference table, like just a table, and there's a giant pile of bananas in the middle of it. So bananas feature very prominently in this video.
Yeah.
And so and they're all just talking about like how mind-blowing the graphics are, how cool it was, how amazing Donkey Kong like felt to like smash things as, like all this kind of stuff. And then there's one high school kid who has like kind of he looked like very like grunge.
Yeah.
And he's I guess like appropriate for the Seattle area. But anyways, he's like in a car and he's the narrator of it, and he's like, "We're on our way to Nintendo headquarters in Redmond, Washington. Talk about like Donkey Kong Country." And he's walking through Nintendo of America headquarters, talking to like developers and marketing people, and they're all holding bananas in their hands and wearing Play It Loud t-shirts.
That's so funny.
At one point, he's like talking to somebody and he's like, "But how do you like get these amazing graphics into my Super Nintendo? Do I need some sort of adapter?" And the guy's like, No, man.
You don't.
Exactly. We're taking all this power and putting it right in the cartridge.
Hey man, chill out.
And then they talk to Tim Stamper, but on the phone. So he's just a voice from England. And the video is just of this like cool dude on a telephone, a corded
Right,
telephone,
of course, yes.
just talking to Tim Stamper in England about the
That's
graphics,
that's
about how
wild.
they did the graphics. It's very funny. It's a
Okay,
very
so
funny video.
a couple things off of that. One, I think it's very funny that they would have to in 1994 be trying to sell the like 90s US coolness of something by calling it an Englishman. Can't think of anything less 1994 cool than that. But that make the idea of a bunch of kids around a table talking about how cool Donkey Kong Country is, just made me flash on the reveal of the Wii remake of GoldenEye. That when they revealed it at like an E3 presentation, or maybe it was just a Nintendo Direct, they did so with like sort of a focus group thing of asking people like their memories of playing GoldenEye, and then they're like, "What if we told you Nintendo was making a new one?" And I don't even know what the "and" was, but GoldenEye's back, and it was all these like late 20 somethings with like memories of playing it at sleepovers and be like, "Whoa, that's so cool!" And it's just funny when Nintendo thinks they have to try to be cool.
Yeah, it's so uncomfortable.
Yes.
But it worked.
Sure.
Like, like
Sure.
when I'm like, because was not a Nintendo Power subscriber, but I remember watching this at a friend's house, and I just remember, like, at the time I was like 10 or something like that. And so to see these like high school kids that were into it, it was like aspirational,
Totally,
it's like,
yes.
this must be cool. Yeah. Oh,
Very good. The Donkey Kong Country VHS. Mark your W.
My W is for World Map. And we've talked about them quite a bit in this episode, but I feel like this is another one where they took the familiar trappings of a Mario platformer and then Donkey Kong it up.
Donkey Kong did up. Yeah.
Because, and especially like by the time you get to the third Donkey Kong Country game, they're kind of doing their own thing with it, where it becomes more exploratory. Different areas open up, and you have to have different vehicles in order to like traverse it. But especially the original Donkey Kong Country feels very much like like taking what was done traditionally in like Super Mario Brothers 3.
Yeah.
And
it is a very like, why is this set up this way though, right? And I actually kind of feel the same way about the world maps in Donkey Kong 94, where it's like, yeah, I guess it matters that this is a map, but like everything is linear.
Well,
with the exception of like the aforementioned outposts.
Well, also there are like secret exits in Donkey Kong Country that does open up like a few alternate routes. Like not
in the first game.
Yeah, doesn't it?
I don't.
Can't you like
think so?
Yeah, maybe not.
I mean, it's possible. I don't remember there being any, but
yeah, I could be wrong. As much as it pains me to say that, but
this is something that we would love to hear about. Are there hidden exits that lead to different paths through the world map in Donkey Kong Country?
Yeah, let us know. But yes, world map.
Yeah, very good. My W is for Whiz-Pig, the villain from Diddy Kong Racing. Why does a racing game need a villain, you ask? Because there's like a story in Diddy Kong Racing where Whiz-Pig is taking over Timber the Tiger's island. Whiz-Pig is like an evil space wizard pig from the future who's giant and rides around on a rocket. He's very confusing and is not a... Are you looking up Whiz-Pig right now?
I was just trying to find a picture. Yeah,
yeah.
I feel like
we've talked about him on the show before.
Yeah,
yeah. He's a weirdo. Mercifully contained to Diddy Kong Racing, never to be seen again. But yeah, Whiz-Pig.
Very good.
Which brings us to my X. X, a famously difficult letter for us when we do these ABCs. So I'm going with expert level players. Famously, there are some extremely high level Donkey Kong players. Two as featured in the documentary King of Kong, Billy Mitchell and Steve Wiebe, who kind of trade Donkey Kong high score records back and forth through the course of the thing. And it's just amazing how much these personalities have like persisted as like integral parts of the Donkey Kong arcade community.
Yeah. Ooh, it is so funny how Billy Mitchell has just like loomed large
Yeah,
for so long.
right. And he's your brother.
No relation.
Oh, okay.
No relation.
Gotcha.
Very good. Well, hilariously, to me anyways, there is a character in a Donkey Kong game that starts with the letter X, and it is
Really?
Zananab, or it's banana backwards with an X at the front.
Oh, yes.
From DK Jungle Climber, which is the Nintendo DS sequel to King of Swing. And Zananab.
Wait. Jungle Climber is the sequel to King of Swing?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, Jungle Climber is the DS game, and King of Swing is the
the
Boy
GBA
Advance.
game? Okay.
Yeah,
I maybe had
the
that
original.
reversed in my head.
Oh, okay.
Go on.
Well, yes, he is an alien that is from a like alien species that are anthropomorphic bananas,
Okay.
and so he is a banana. He is like a half peeled banana. Like imagine his banana peel being one of his arms.
Gotcha.
And he has
Yes.
big googly eyes.
Uh-huh.
And he like lands on a beach, and there's like a crystal banana that King K. Rool steals.
Sure.
You know, so on and so forth. And so you are helping Zananab get his crystal banana back.
Okay, so earlier we were talking about a prehistoric Donkey Kong, which is basically just Donkey Kong cross Flintstones. Zananab can be our Great Gazoo.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Introduced in later not versions of the game.
Seasons.
Yes,
Yeah.
later. Oh yeah. Great.
Yeah. The Great Gazoo, who probably warrants explanation, is an alien that appears in the Flintstones that only Fred can see and who grants Fred wishes. Does magic.
Does magic, I think. Maybe grants wishes, I'm not sure. But it like is into mischief.
Yes, absolutely.
Causes a lot of mischief.
Right.
Yeah.
A little bit of a monkey's paw. A little Kong's paw situation.
Yes, that's right. So yes, Zananab would be our Great Gazoo for sure.
Zananab, great pull, Mark.
Which brings us to why.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not such a great pull. It's parentheses yellow banana horde.
Okay. Do we want to talk more about the banana horde, be it yellow or otherwise?
Well, all I'm gonna say about it is that it's an invention of the Donkey Kong Country games.
Famously, we talked about this in NCS Arcade. The original Donkey Kong includes no bananas.
Yeah, no mention of bananas.
That's right.
But you know, so many questions about the banana horde. How do you keep it fresh? What does Donkey Kong do with them?
Wouldn't it be better to just let them grow on trees? You can pick them right out of the trees. They grow on trees.
And yet a driving force for so many of his adventures. The yellow banana horde.
I won't say very good, but good. My Y is for young Kongs. And so part of this is I just want to point out that there are a handful of young playable Kong characters. Kiddy Kong, Donkey Kong Jr., the baby Donkey Kong that we referred to earlier. But the other part of this is me just owning up to a mistake that I made a while ago in identifying Chunky Kong as a kid Kong. He's not. He's not
Chunky
a kid.
Kong's an adult.
Chunky Kong is an adult.
He can go to war.
Yes, and he can fight and die for his country, of course, and he can buy a pack of cigarettes. Old enough to rent a car? We don't know. We don't know if he's that old.
Yeah, we don't know his age.
But so just want to call out an earlier mistake that I made regarding the youngness of the Kong.
This is good.
Yeah, thank you. It's growth,
Yeah.
I think. A sign that I am no longer a young Kong. But they've kind of stopped. We've not really revisited the idea of young Kongs in a while since 64. So who will be the next young Kong? I pose to you.
Yeah, and are we done inventing new Kongs?
Great question. I don't know. I mean, maybe we've hit a Toad-like wall there where we're just like, no, you know what? The Toads we have are fine.
Because we've seen in Bonanza some like
helper monkeys, I believe.
And
they're
we've
called.
seen some villain, like
Yeah, that's right. Some mean Kongs.
but we don't know that they're going to be Kongs. Like we,
Mm.
like how in even Jungle Beat they still use that for like sumo Kong and
Right,
stuff like that.
right.
But I wonder if they will have a different name.
Yeah, it's a good question. I wonder if we're done with Kongs. No new Kongs. All right, which then brings us to Z.
To Z.
And we finish out the alphabet. I will do so with the zebras in the Lion King, the Broadway musical level of Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze. I know we sort of glancingly mentioned it earlier, but there is one level in Tropical Freeze that, like, I don't know how else you justify its existence other than to say they're doing the Lion King musical.
Yeah, on Broadway. Yeah.
Yeah, like it looks like they should have to say like directed by Julie Taymor in the corner, because like it has that exact aesthetic that I don't think has existed in any other context before.
Yeah, for sure inspired by.
Yeah.
For sure.
And there are zebras as part of that.
Yeah, great. My Z is for Zinger or Zingers, the bee enemies that are in Donkey Kong Country. Have that real 90s CGI look about them.
They
I
really
feel like
do,
they feel like they could be right out of that reboot cartoon.
Or Johnny Quest.
Yes, the one from the 90s on Cartoon Network. Yeah.
When they would go into Quest World.
Yeah, Zingers. I guess so you have like the
Can I ask a question about Zingers?
Yeah.
They have spikes on their backs.
They do, yeah.
Okay. I guess that was my question.
Yeah, they do. They do.
Okay.
Yes, apparent metal looking spikes.
Oh, okay.
But the thing that's interesting is that so we have like the Kremlings,
Yeah.
right? Which are very identifiably crocodile or like alligator inspired.
Yes.
But then you have other enemy characters in the world. Like you have the vultures, you have
Neki.
these like zingers,
Bees.
you have orangutans that are throwing like barrels at you. So you have
Beavers. You've got a lot of beavers.
Yeah, so are they
Naughties.
working with the Kremlings, or are they just like existing in the world of the jungle and
they just see which way the wind is blowing, and they're like,
or they're just like
I'm not going to side with the Kongs. I gotta
like,
go with the
right,
Kremlings.
yeah, exactly. Or they're just protecting their territory, like they're just living their life, and
or La Vida Loca,
and
frankly.
and you have to like navigate through them because you happen to be fighting the Kremlings.
So I would definitely believe that of the Zingers, that they are just bees placed in, because they usually don't chase you or anything like that. They're just kind of like placed in a specific location, or they're like patrolling back and forth.
Right.
And I guess just the way all of these characters work, that none of them are really chasing you. It's also unclear. Like the beavers, they don't attack you; they just like walk.
Right. So maybe there is a distinction between the Kremlings, who are actively
Right.
bad, and like the other characters that aren't trying to actively thwart you. They're just living their lives,
Right.
and they become obstacles on your way.
Yeah, that's interesting. The thing is, the boss characters, like the boss Nekis,
That's true.
they are guarding parts of your banana horde
No,
that have
you're
been
right.
stolen. So I think they must be in league with
You're right.
with the Kremlings.
Yeah, man, trying to give the Zingers a little bit of grace, but nope.
No,
They're just
sorry.
bad bees.
These are some bad bees. That's the end of the alphabet. All right, let's close out our the second half A to Z ABCs of Donkey Kong. All right, and that is going to do it for this episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society. Thank you so much to our 16-bit patrons, Connor McCabe, Patrice Millette, Kyle Seaborn, Drew Mackey, and James Haig. We appreciate you. We appreciate everyone who is listening or interacting with us in any way. If you're not in our Discord, you should be. Email us, nintendocartridgesociety@gmail.com. Anthony DeLuca made our logo. Our theme music is provided by 8-Bit Betty. You can get more of his music by going to 8bitbetty.com or by listening right now. For my co-host, Mark Mitchell, this is Patrick Ellers saying thank you for listening.